Hello and welcome. I've got Timothy Howes, and I invite creatives to come on a Tuesday to chat to me. Basically, it's like a night school for me. I use it to get to know people who do interesting things and find out how they do it. Because I work in what's called the creative industries and I haven't got a clue. I'm making it all up. So, Tim Howes, tell me your story. What do you do?
So thanks for having me, Gav, by the way,
No,
first and
it's a
foremost.
pleasure.
So I've been on this earth since the 80s, but for the last 13 years or so, I have been employed within the costume industry. Um, yeah, under a few different titles, but essentially you could put it all under costume historian. I always feel like people would laugh at that within the
No,
industry. They might think that sounds a bit wanky,
no.
but yes, costume related work for the last just over 13 years.
And so is that theatre, film, TV, and wider?
Done a bit of all of that. Now mainly film and TV, but certainly done a big stint of theatre costume work as well. But that was more in the early years.
Now, I know some of the big productions you've been working on, and we'll talk more about that later if that's okay, because I am genuinely interested. I'm a person right before it was trendy to do so that would sit and stay to the end of movie credits because for a couple of reasons. I was always interested in what was going on. I was a soundtrack guy, so I wanted to find out music information. Also, cinemas usually had the best sound systems unless it was a crackly old print. And then obviously with Marvel, they started adding things at the end. But I
But
always like it because you get those credits and you see the tens and some tens of thousands these days with digital elements of people working on a production. So did you imagine you'd be doing this job when you were at school?
absolutely not. Nor would I have wanted to have done it, I think, back then. I would have probably poo pooed it straight away and said, no, I've got a famous hip hop album to sell. I've got a platinum rock album to make, or
Yeah.
I'm going to be a famous actor. I've
Yeah.
always wanted to do something creative.
Okay.
Um, so I'm glad I've sort of fallen into a creative industry. But as you say, when those credits go up, it gives you a sort of inkling of actually costumes just one tiny bit. This massive spectrum of, you know, I did study film at university, film and literature, but I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do.
And I think that's okay as well. I think that's really important. I think, when you are at school and there's this pressure to funnel you down a path. And that's why I think it's always disappointing with very reductive attitudes to cultural subjects at school. It's like, well, don't do drama. You're not going to win an Oscar. Don't do
Mm,
music. You're not going to have a
totally.
platinum album. Don't do PE. You're not going to play for England.
Mm.
Do chemistry because you're going to discover a new element.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
but
Um,
there's so many jobs. But so then, okay, so that was the path. So how did you end up? What was your first inroad into becoming part of this costume world?
well, having dropped out of university at about 9 months into university, basically because at 18 years old, I was not ready for university and still had the mind of a 15-year-old, say, with all this money that can't ever run out when you're used to 10 quid a week pocket money. Anyway, I dropped out, couldn't keep up with it, and needed a job and just went and got the first job that came along, some terrible pharmaceutical company. It
Chemistry.
paid quite well, and I was able to just party and earn a bit of money in a job that I hated. And that was fine at 19, 20, 21 years old in my hometown, pretty much. Then I took voluntary redundancy after being there for about 3 years because it was driving me mental. So I took my chance to get out. And then I thought, right, I'm 22 years old, about to turn 23. Now I can be a famous rapper, actor,
Of course.
singer, um, a famous something. I think I just wanted to be, we didn't have TikTok or anything like that, or like, couldn't make YouTube videos or anything. But I used to make little films with my friends and comedy sketches. Jackass was a big thing, things like that. Um, but never really thought about costume. I did a little drama class that I probably didn't have the discipline for, and was probably again far too immature for. Um, and was sort of trying to make it in all these sort of creative little outlets, but jack of all, master of none. And then my sister, who worked in the costume industry, suggested that I just do 2 weeks work experience where she worked. I had no idea, no real desire to do it, but I thought, sod it, it's only 2 weeks. I'm going to be no good at it. I'm going to be completely out of my depth. The imposter syndrome already started before I even turned up to be work experience. I thought, I can't sew, I can't thread a needle, I can't tell you what that style of coat's called. I can't, And to be honest, I haven't really got a big interest in costume, or at least didn't think I did. So I got there, this massive costume house called Angels in North London.
Which I've heard of, which is one of the big ones, isn't it?
One of the big ones, biggest in the UK, certainly. And I think there's something like 9 miles of rails of clothes in there. And it all goes back to beginning of time to contemporary. And yeah, I did feel like a rabbit in the headlights, and it was intimidating, but everybody was nice, and I sort of stuck it out, and I didn't have to do anything that was sort of, I don't know. They realised I was on work experience, and it was just, And then after the 2 weeks, I thought I'd quite like to do this a bit more. I quite like this. Didn't expect to at all. So I was like, give us a job, anything. And they were like, no, sorry, we can't do that. We've got, there were two, there wasn't a space for me. So I just thought, oh, well, I'll go on to the next thing. And I didn't pursue it. And then the voluntary redundancy money started running out. And this dream of doing something creative with no experience started to fade. And I went back to the drawing room and got an office job in the city and had to put my suit on and go back to work. I was selling watches and jewellery, basically a salesman. Again, something that I'd never done before and was completely out of my depth and had imposter syndrome doing. But it felt like something that was quick and easy to get into and was a career. But every few months or so, I would email and sort of look around for maybe going back to that place, or has an opportunity arisen yet? And a few years later, they probably got sick of me knocking on the door, but an opportunity did arise. I took a massive pay cut and started off as a junior costumier. In terms of the costume industry, incredibly late in life, at 26 years old, because most of these people started in, studying costume or fashion at college, uni, and had jobs by the time they were 19, 20. So I did get into it late, but it just, I never looked back since then.
So that spark, what was it about being amongst the creativity? And because I used to be a drama teacher, secondary and A level, and there were always students who had a fascination with design, whether it be set, stage design, or costume design. And it was never an area it was an area I valued. I love going to costume houses, and we've got some crackers here in the north. I love going through to see the little stitched in label, the names of people who'd worn that costume or who'd been made for. Who were you finding? First of all, give us a little bit of that. Whose costumes? What amazing costumes were you coming across in Angels?
Oh God, I mean, yeah, you'd find. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say from the ones you'd find at Angels, but they have like a big star room where you'd come across all sorts of people. I mean,
well, I know this. I know that for even tiny productions, people will get costumes from Angels, and inside somebody I know had a jacket, and it said Sean Bean in the back.
Yeah, no,
obviously things are made for films, and then they get rented out for other things.
Yeah. No, I flicked through one the other day and hired it out, and it wasn't until we got it sort of looked inside and it said Guy Pearce, and it's little ones like that. And you should see the size of Richard Griffith's trousers, by the way.
They probably fit me.
Well, I don't think so. Um, but yeah, and I got to fit some famous people, but and stuff like that. But you saying it's exciting to see names in suits. What was really exciting for me to, as a sort of nerd, to dig into the suits and see a date. So it might say this suit, handwritten Brooklyn 1912 or something. It's like, fucking hell, this is 110 years old, this suit, and it's still in great condition. I wonder who wore it. He was a little chap, whoever he was, and just the history behind something that has been hanging, I mean, would have been used over and over again, but, actually has that handwritten, and just the quality of how those suits were made, the materials back then. It's not something you pick off the peg in Next. And it's sort of, those little stories that you start making up in your head about these people. But then a lot of the history of costume is kind of ungoogleable, and you have to get your hands on the fabrics and look at the shape and go, well, if you want a shape of a 1912 costume, you can't ask for a better one than that because it says 1912 in it. It's not like you could find a medieval costume or even a Georgian costume with somebody's, because it would have disintegrated by now. But the fact that some of it's still preserved is quite fascinating and extremely exciting for a nerd like me when you come across that kind of stuff.
So you describe yourself as a costume historian. What is it about the history element that interests you?
So, well, first of all, historian is a sort of term to cover everything, because you might do a job that's contemporary, and that's just as difficult in a way. But yeah, it's fascinating to me to know, because I'm useless at women's wear, by the way. I think it's in its own right, it's more difficult. Some of the stuff that women costumiers that are dressing women have to do, I think it's brilliant. I'm not great at that, but I do specialise in menswear. And yeah, just seeing how men dressed and why they dressed progressively over the centuries was something that I was fascinated in without realizing until I got into costume. The I don't know, the sort of progression of neckwear, for example. Why do we wear ties now? Do we still wear ties now? Maybe because we have to. We have to put one on for work, or we have to go to a wedding, or it's black tie event. It wasn't that long ago where you would, you'd feel silly without one on, even sitting reading the paper at home. But, medieval times, you just, you'd have some kind of wrap around your neck to keep you smart. Slowly progresses into like the Steinkirks of the late 17th century, where soldiers would wear a wrap like that around their neck, and it would slowly become in a state of undress, and then they'd button it through a buttonhole, and then all the dandies started doing it and buttoning it through their buttonhole, and so taking the military rubbing off on dandies, who would then rub off on people below them who couldn't even afford it but might try and emulate it, but it wouldn't work. And then that turning into a sort of neat little Regency, or a frilly jabot turning into a Regency falling bow, turning into a tiny little Victorian bow tie, turning into a Edwardian tie with a separate collar, turning into our, neckties that we have now. But something, I'm just using that as an example of.
But that does interest me. That does interest me because that the history there, because of course, if you're working on a production and you're being asked to pull together, you need that information, don't you? So you need to know who the person is in society, who the character wants to be,
Yeah.
because we dress in real life, we dress according to what we think people, particularly if we're going out, if we're going to work, what makes us comfortable or otherwise. But you have to kind of get yourself into the view of some like characters, I suppose. But yeah, I know you also work
Yeah.
in. Come.
Well, I mean, you're guided by some kind of creative license, which trickles down from the big designer. I've dipped my toe in the design water, but there's always someone above me that's sort of got the final say, and they might want it to be historical, but with a catwalk edge or something. But it's funny what you said about how we dress ourselves, because we are. I mean, it sounds a little bit pretentious, but a lot of it does. But we're all dressing ourselves every day. So if you want to do a 2020 show and you want some normal Joe Schmo walking down the road and you're sort of out of touch with whoever that person is, it's not that easy to just suddenly make that outfit, because that person's got up and dressed themselves in a particular way with a particular mindset that isn't yours. So we're all thinking about, well, those shoes don't really go with these trousers. And someone, well, you should never wear brown shoes with a blue suit, or you should never wear black suit. Why not? I'm going to do that. And then they're like, okay, well, that's the way that particular person dresses. So there's no wrong or right, basically.
No, and it takes somebody with a creative view to do something differently, and it gets picked up either high fashion or street fashion or popular culture. But I know a lot of the. But before we move on, one of my favorite aspects of watching the Jilly Cooper Rivals David Tennant version, I don't know if you've seen it,
I haven't
was
seen that.
because it's set in the 80s or whatever, just the costumes, just the clothing, the jumpers,
Hmm.
the day wear, and yes, of course, it's like, oh, for those scenes, everyone is in a double-breasted suit, but that's not interesting. What is interesting is what they're wearing at home, what the
Yeah, yeah.
trousers look like, what the kind of like the design of the jumper looks like, and it must be, and you can tell that a lot have been sourced, but it must be. I know there are people sit down that make these things as well, particularly for high end
Yeah.
productions.
And if you do make it, it can be bloody difficult to have it look real. Um, Even if it's, the 80s doesn't seem that long ago. There's plenty of people around now that could tell you what they wore or show you photos of what they wore. But unless you were there, you're sort of, you can't ever recreate it fully. Hair and makeup's another massive part of it as well. But yeah, it's
So, being mindful of what you can say, give us a quick overview of some of the productions that we would recognise you've worked on.
so at Angels you'd work on sort of all sorts and you just sort of help. But it wasn't until I got out of Angels and went freelance. My first job that I worked on was House of the Dragon,
Okay.
the first series. I was doing a lot of medievally armory bits at Angels, so that was a great one to start with. Then I did a contemporary job called Disclaimer, which was Kate Blanchett, strangely married to Sacha Baron Cohen in that show that I don't think anybody's seen, that's on Apple TV. But I had to throw myself out of armor, leather, swords, armies
So, when was
into
Disclaimer set?
charity shopping.
Was it contemporary set or was it?
Contemporary. Well, 2001
Okay,
was a lot
so
of it.
still not.
No, you still got to really think about, because 2001, the same time now, between now and 2001, is the same time between 2001 and 1987.
That's maths.
That's maths.
But I know what you
No,
mean.
it's even more, isn't it? I don't know.
Something like that.
What's
But I mean, and
1987
I
plus?
know somebody who's my age sent to me the distance in time between the year we were born and now is the same distance in
1977.
time back to World War One. I get that the idea, but so how do you go from an imagined historical costume to a real set of historical costumes? What's that? What are the challenges for both of those?
Um, well, it's almost easier to go right back because there'll be no one there to say we didn't. No, that wasn't what my dad was wearing in 1410.
But there will be people that do that. I see it. You know,
Well, yeah,
people
there'll
that.
be historic, but we're always arguing with each other about what people wore and blah blah. But that comes down
Nitpicks.
to research and experience and being a bit of a. But then 2001, you have to get that right because there's um so much. That pair of trainers was 2004. Do you know what I mean? Didn't come out till then. It's never going to ruin the show, but someone can hone in, and for someone that might take.
YouTubers love that kind of
They
thing.
fucking
They
love it.
really
They
love
love
it.
it.
Oh, well, in this scene, they're wearing a pair
Uh,
of Reebok 720s. This scene was set in 1984,
yeah,
and the
exactly.
720 came out in 1985, the summer of
Yeah,
85, to be
all of that.
precise. And
All
it's
of
just,
that.
and as someone who loves the whole process. I can suspend my disbelief and be lost in the world of the Rings of Power or the world of House of Dragon, but I also can look at things and go, wow, I want to know how they did that. I want to know
Yeah.
how they made that. And it does not bother me, those little things, but I can imagine
No,
it,
and you
it,
can't you want to get that right and you want to geek out over that kind of thing. But after a while, you just have to go, what am I doing? I've spent an hour looking at these shoes on eBay. No one's going to see them. It's not really the attitude, and then in the end, it's a lot safer to kind of stay away from brands and things like that. But from that job, I had to go on to Rings of Power, which just said so medieval, sort of quite dark and serious and moody medieval to quite dark and serious 2001 and modern day into orcs and goblins and wrapping up 70 pieces of something or other over a full, prosthetics on these poor chaps that were.
okay. So
Uh,
you have to costume on top of. I know we've talked about this previously. You had to costume on top of a big stunt setup. So not only are you working within the parameters of the world building, the
yeah,
costuming, the force history of it all, you also need to make it practical, pragmatic, and
for something like that, yeah. And then someone has to dress that 60-piece look that you've put together in the morning that might never have seen the outfit before, and they're like, this rag's for the left knee. So it's all just it's strange. Something as simple as a t-shirt and jeans could be obsessed over by a designer to the point where that becomes something very difficult to get perfect, and then something as hardcore as a Lord of the Rings orc that's covered in tiny bits of tooth and bone and chainmail and could sometimes be easier in its own way because it's.
So, because of your years of Angels and your overview of the historical nature of costume, does that mean you have the ability to go through those racks in your mind and think, oh, because obviously not everything is big budget. Some things about, well, we've got this budget for this scene. We need
Yeah,
to find a quick solution.
yeah. It's definitely like reading a book when you flick through those rails. I was there for 8 years. I've been to lots of other costumiers around. There's a couple more in London and a few in Europe. I've been lucky enough to see how they do things. They all follow a similar path, but as you flick through, yeah, it does sort of go into your mind, and then you might say, actually, I know the perfect suit for that. I hope it's still hanging on the racks, and you try and dig it out from memory. and then sod's law, it'll be out on some other show, and you've been spending an entire day looking for something that isn't there, and then you'd have to find the next best thing. But it's like a huge library, um, spanning the entirety of
So
costume.
going back to your Angels days, tell me, did you put the costumes on and lark about?
No, of course not. I mean, I definitely didn't wear a massive pair of fawn legs and trot around.
I'm Mr. Tumnus.
Timness.
Mr. Timnus.
Yeah, that's
Very
something I
good.
definitely didn't do.
No,
But one
that
thing I do to, I rarely measure trousers, kind of, yeah, but when you know your own size, you can just sort of throw something on and say, there's no better way to measure things than that. So I'm forever throwing things on and going, I'm
so
just measuring it.
who can you body double for? I mean, you're quite tall.
Oh, I mean, I guess sort of Jason Momoa,
Oh yeah, yeah.
that sort of,
That was
yeah.
immediately what we were all thinking.
Yeah.
What's a costume um, project that you had to do that you're most proud of, kind of seeing on screen?
Um, do you know what that's a difficult one. There's there's one that I haven't. There's one that hasn't come out yet that I can't talk about. I know, sorry, which is my first sort of dip into the design world. So I'm very, very excited to see that. But
Dip into what? Sorry.
the design world,
Okay, great. Well done.
so um, looking forward to that's going to be very scary to watch back. But I'd probably go back to to the little theatre jobs, you know, rather than feeling proud to have been part of something huge. You sort of get lost in the giganticness of some of these shows. And also, it's very principle. I would be doing a lot of the crowd, and it's the principals that take all the sort of limelight. But doing some of the little theatre shows, I remember we did a little production of, I think it's called Murder in the Cathedral, and it was set
Yeah.
in a
Is
cathedral.
that T.S. Eliot? No.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's just a little job that I did when I was working at Angels, but seeing the sort of, dressing the actors, getting them on most of them amateurs, but being right there, watching them, getting all nervous on opening night, them and me a little bit, and then seeing the sort of sunset and the sun coming through the stained glass windows in the cathedral and stuff like that. That's something I feel more connected to than these huge shows in a way. But yeah, I think there's going to be some coming up that I'll be.
Okay.
Uh,
So thinking about your role, do you work mostly in the studio, or do you go away on location, or how does that work?
um, I I don't go on location very often. I recently went to a costume house in Spain
Mm.
um, to do another job that I can't talk about. But I actually haven't shot. I mean, I've been to some fantastic locations for. I mean, there's a place on House of the Dragon in. I don't know if I can say any of this.
Well, it was filmed in North Wales. It's filmed in Cornwall. We know all of these things.
Cornwall, yeah. But I mean, that was just, yeah, it's pretty breathtaking when you're there and you take it for granted because you've got so much fucking work to do
Mm.
that you don't sort of sit back and realize how cool it is sometimes. But I can't say I've ever been to any sort of tropical paradise or anything, but certainly some pretty, yeah, again, pretty breathtaking sets. But you could be just as sort of blown away by a set within a studio, blown away by the set design, how the hell these people managed to make this look like a little town you feel like you're immersed in. It's just another tributary to the whole filmmaking process. I don't know how some of these, you know, uh, set designers managed to pull them off. It just looks absolutely incredible. Um, but yeah, as I say, it's just another avenue to film.
So, what do you see your creative industry career aspirations to be? Are they to move into design more, or is it to consolidate what you do? What do you hope for?
Yeah, I mean, sort of typically get into assistant designing and then perhaps one day become, the head designer. I think that comes with a hell of a lot of stress. And my imposter syndrome is always there. So I'm not thinking about that right now. But I guess that's like a goal. I mean, that's how you win that's how you win
Oscar,
the BAFTA.
the BAFTA. Sorry, yeah,
I mean,
aim big.
you win you would win
Mm,
an Oscar,
yeah.
if it's a big movie. And there are some fantastic designs out there with multiple Oscars, and you just think, it
So I'm thinking of
must feel incredible. But I don't know, that doesn't feel that doesn't even feel like an aspiration at the moment.
it's an unreasonable question. I've made you square that. My apologies.
Yeah,
I remember
I'm quite
writing
happy
on.
just getting paid.
Yeah, getting well. That's the reality of working in the creative industries, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, but thinking of films that you love from a costume point of view, what are the films where you're sitting there going, chef's kiss? It just
So
that costume, something from any era of film where it's just like, oh, that's spot on.
I have to say that I watched Carlito's Way recently, and some of those old gangster movies. I mean, Goodfellas as well, but
Hmm.
um,
The collars in Goodfellas as it
the
goes through
collars
the
in Goodfellas. I mean,
yeah.
someone had a real job keeping those absolutely impeccable.
And the continuity, because of course, Goodfellas goes across a couple of decades,
Yeah,
and
but Goodfellas, I think, was the first movie actually that I ever watched where I was like, I need a pair of boots like that. You know, I'm gonna start. I need one of those tops. I need a suit like that. And I think I bought some pointy shoes when I was in secondary school. Didn't really
but it
go
all
with my Nike puffer coat, but I was slowly discovering. But yeah, some of those old gangster movies are breathtaking in terms of costume. Benny Blanco from the Bronx in Carlito's Way.
was that
What he's wearing in the
Jack
club.
Sparrow? No.
Jack Sparrow.
No, what's his name? The actor who played him, was it? No, I'm trying to
That's
remember.
John Leguizamo.
John Leguizamo. There you go.
Yeah,
Apologies.
yeah.
Thinking of a
I
different
mean,
film. I
stuff.
was thinking of Donnie Brasco. There we go.
Well, Donnie Brasco, yeah, but then there's shots in that where he's in these old 70s get-ups, and there's the famous Al Pacino line where he's like stares at his jeans and he's like, "Get a pair of pants, wear what I wear."
You just
Um,
want to wear a brown long leather jacket, don't you?
yeah, basically, I want to be
That's okay.
Johnny Depp. Um, but seriously, yeah, some of the attention to detail in those old gangster films. Um, Once Upon a Time in America as well, and that sort of goes right back. But and Godfather, but yeah, but some of those sharp suits, just from my point of view, just are breathtaking. More than what we'd see as I don't know, a costume flair. I'm a sucker for those old suits because it's nostalgic for me. It reminds me of going, oh shit, that looks cool. That's what makes a bloke look cool, and I still kind of think it does.
So, are you always on the lookout for an item of clothing in a charity shop or something that's like, oh, that's got something to it,
For me to wear myself,
or either or, professionally or for yourself?
yeah, I mean, you don't really see much anymore. There's too many people now trying to scalp them and sell them on eBay, unfortunately. I did find an Edwardian waistcoat in a charity shop fairly recently,
Really
which is just absolutely gorgeous. It had its original buttons and lining and stuff.
incredible.
So yeah, you can get lucky, but you kind of got to go to those vintage shops that charge disgusting amounts of money. Um, but yeah, I think if I found a 70s suit that I loved, it'd probably be a 26 waist anyway, when everybody was so damn skinny. But
Everybody was post-war emaciated.
yeah, so it's, to be honest, it's typically Marks and Spencers for me, but won't hear a bad word about them.
That's
But
fair
no,
enough.
I don't spend too much money on clothes. Uh, but yeah, everyone takes pride and kind of has their own, I don't know, cares more than others. But then costume's nothing to do with fashion. Um, Fashion is something I've never sort of been interested in. Um, but certainly the history, why men wore what they wear, and even now why they wear what they wear. Although I don't think you could really put anything beyond the 2000s and give it a real bracket. When you think of 70s and 80s, even the 90s, to me conjures up stereotypical images of costume, but I can't really.
Do we need a bit of distance of time first? Do we need to establish some of the cliches? Perhaps culture establishes the cliches for us, and we're too close to it at the minute until somebody does a historical piece set in 2008, and then so they're looking for the cliches
Well,
and that
they'll
creates a
have a
look.
job. I think it's just started to become a melting pot of. You've got that guy that dresses a bit 70s. You've got this chap who dresses a bit 80s. 90s has made this big resurgence, but I'm not cool enough to understand any of that. This is what my niece tells me. Um, I'm still stuck in skinny jean world, keeping that indie rock movement alive, man.
And as with, I mean, the most complimentary element, I think, for character work with any costume is always a haircut, isn't it? You know, it's get if you've got the contemporary haircut with a 70s cut suit, just it's the uncanny valley, isn't it?
It
So
doesn't work.
that combination of all of those creative skills across the
Yeah, it's a
industry.
completely different thing that we kind of. It's its own department, and there isn't a huge amount of collaboration between costume and hair and makeup because they're so sort of they've got their job to do. But if you send somebody away in a, I don't know, in a Georgian outfit and they've got short back and sides, they come back with a big Georgian wig on, suddenly the costume makes sense. So yeah, it's hugely important. Hugely. Um, as is all of it, every department. But yeah, in terms of making a look, hair and makeup's just as important.
So just, I want you to, you don't have to tell us what production is, but I want you to think about one of the big productions you've worked on. And it's not a test. Roughly how many people on that big production, which you can tell us or not, worked in your in the costume department? You were one person of how many?
In the whole costume department, I don't know.
So you think of a particular film or a particular
Yeah,
TV
no, I'm trying to
series.
I mean, 100 and something, like 100 to 150 people.
That's amazing, isn't it? That we do. I do. I'm going to get on a soapbox here. I do find it sad that I think as a society as well as a government, we neglect the fact that that's 150 jobs in a really important international industry that
Mm,
we are not necessarily channeling people towards.
no.
And I think that's a sad. So if you were there was like a 15, 16 year old art student, drama student who was thinking, oh, costume really does it for me. What would you? I know you started later in your life, but what advice would you give yourself, that 16-year-old, to get you to the point you're at quicker?
So the thing is, I won't advocate working cheaply or working for free. But if you can, try and get a bit of work experience, I think at that age. Um, costume houses, and when I say that, these places in London, just type in costume houses London or costume houses. I'm sure there's some up north, UK. Send them an email and ask just to do some work experience, because they're the places. They're a really good stepping stone. Um, as far as other um, as far as other uh, jobs within the film industry, I'm not entirely sure. I'm sort of so, but I would certainly say work experience at a costume house. And do you know what? Good thing about work experience is it's only a week or two, and you might absolutely hate it. Because that's the other thing. If you end up studying it for 4 years, and then the reality of the job you can't stand, even if you don't work there, you just observe. I would say, yeah. Um, but and within and ask a lot of questions. Ask a lot of questions if you get work experience, even only for a few days, and see if you could get some more experience on a film set, or see if you know somebody who works around a film set, and you could, even if you just go to watch and see if it feels like something you'd enjoy doing. But
We
work
have
out if you'd enjoy doing it first.
we have so many films being made in Liverpool now, where I'm
Right.
based. We've just, I mean, we've got the four Beatles movies, obviously, but there's lots of big international films come through
Mm-hmm.
because of the exteriors. We just had Clayface, the big DC. So parts of Liverpool were transformed into Gotham. But we get historical, and obviously we get things like Peaky Blinders because of the architecture. And so, you can stand on. I stood on the street in Liverpool recently, watched 1980s Berlin being filmed.
Right. Yeah. No,
A
it's incredible.
Checkpoint Charlie, which made me think: if you're going to film 1980s Berlin, Berlin is still available. But never mind. But
But I used to go around film production companies there was a lot of them in Soho in the early 2000s, and just hand a a paper CV out. Um, to be honest, I don't think it really came to much, but I know people who managed to get work experience within just a production house. It's a contact. It's a contact within filmmaking, and from there, just keep asking questions and see where you can go. Or keep asking your friends, because there's so many bloody jobs in the film industry, that somebody must know somebody else who knows somebody that could, you know, get you in there. But
And most
yeah.
areas have a film office as well, which they're always very happy to tell you what's going on because it's good
Mm,
advertising for them. Okay, Tim, I'm so pleased you gave this time and this insight. I know you work on some big productions, and there's ones you don't want to mention, which is fine. Because I mean, obviously, the international reach that this live podcast has will get you in a lot of trouble.
exactly.
But but thank you for that insight.
No,
I
I'm sorry.
genuinely,
Yeah, if I held back a little bit, but they put the fear of God in you on.
yeah, everything is an NDA these days. But no, I mean, but thinking about the fact that I love Rings of Power, we're big fans of that in this house. And I love House of the Dragon, we're fans of that. And to the fact that there's your work that you contributed to is on the screen there. Now, as we draw this to a close, Tim, I like to ask what your go-to comfort culture is. Something that you watch. There's no guilty pleasure here. That you listen to. Saying it's like, I need the warm bath equivalent of that book, of that album, of that film.
Hmm.
And while you're thinking about that, if anybody who's here that live wants to ask a question, and you don't have to, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, about Tim, about what he does, about. I'm looking at your bookshelf. Now's the time to type that in. So, what is it you're thinking? I just need to feel what you're doing, watching, listening to, reading.
Probably the opposite of what should make you feel. Probably a nice, relaxing horror, because I'm a horror movie nerd,
Okay.
and that horror movies don't really have much connotation with costume, but that's my comfort movies. As
Yeah,
weird as
such
that might
as.
sound. Here's my big
That's all right. Well,
Silent Hill poster on the wall here.
there you go. That doesn't sound weird because, of course, it's a huge industry. It's one of the few genres of film that regularly turns a profit. Blumhouse makes low budget films and return their money all the time. That's so it's incredibly popular. So we've got here. Barry says, "Do you have arguments with directors or other creatives who favour artistic license over accuracy? And is it a fight worth fighting?"
Wouldn't have an argument with them over it because it can often be it can often be easier to keep it completely period accurate, almost like you're doing it mathematically to a yes and no answer. So, is it a fight worth fighting? No. Um, Maybe if I was a little bit higher up in the industry, then I could fight that fight. But it's
I
yeah.
suppose your job is to give options, is it?
My job is sort of to deliver what the designer wants
Right.
at the end of the day,
Make it happen.
make it happen and get their approval. And, you know, if they tell you you've done a great job, then you've cracked it, no matter how disgusting it might look. No, I'm joking.
No,
But
listen,
yeah, I think
if you
now
work in
more
the
than ever shows
ultimately,
are.
if you work in the creative industry, everyone is seeking approval. Even an artist who says they're not, a contemporary artist, is still, that is whether it be the approval of who we're working with, working for, or our audience.
Yeah.
That's why we do it. We are servicing an ultimate vision, and at some point, for some people, it's their vision. And I think
Although
sometimes.
I'm sure there's been many instances where designers trying to achieve um, perfect historical accuracy fallen short in certain aspects, and then just said that was my creative license. Actually,
That'll do. Josie asks, this was so interesting. Thank you. I wanted to do costume when at school. Just need to think if anyone will give work experience to a 36-year-old.
absolutely, and a 46 and a 56.
No, thank you. Actually, there is a specific question from Josie.
But they would.
Is fantasy genre harder because there isn't a specific historical time reference?
Uh, yeah, yeah. Hard is a difficult, um, kind of. But no, but then you can't, you can't have anyone breathing down your neck about it. If you're doing, for example, a military thing where you had to get, an army together, that is extremely mathematical. There is yes or no answers. You get that wrong and you're sort of in trouble. You're doing something ecclesiastical and you get it wrong. You risk offending, somebody's church. And that's dangerous, or cultural things. If you fuck that up, that's a problem.
I
So,
do imagine that
so
if,
fantasy relieves you of that pressure.
yeah, you can't have somebody, and those some people do. Some people do. They're like, well, I don't think in the original version of the Orc, which of course
Oh
is what
no,
they
well,
intended. Yeah.
it wouldn't
Well,
have quite gone that way, and they would have actually tipped it to the right at
I always find it.
7:30.
I always find it interesting with fantasy or science fiction when you get people online saying, "Well, that is not how." The Doctor would travel through time. It is not it is not accurate. It's like, well, of course, it's not accurate. It's a fiction. Don't
Yeah,
worry about it.
yeah, and then you're clawing back to a lore,
Yeah,
LORE,
don't get me
that's been
started.
invented, and
I
within that law,
cannot
you can't fuck
stand.
up.
Yeah, I cannot stand law. I cannot. If anybody says to me canon about anything fantasy or science fiction, I have no interest. Just enjoy the thing. Don't look
Yeah,
for. I went.
but
So, as a sidebar, as we wind up here, thank you very much, Tim. I went to see Tron Ares on the weekend, and I did not expect to enjoy it. But as I'm going there, and my son Ned is a big fan of Tron, I went, no, that's wrong. I've always taught you or encourage you to go and see something expecting to enjoy it and then to assess. And I changed that mindset. It's an okay film. It's
right,
all right. it's all right. But it's that like I know if I was going to go something and go, I want this to fail, then it's going to.
I think the Independent disagreed with you, but
And I'm prepared to stand up for that. It's okay. 6 out of 10. Tim, thank you so much. I really value your time. It was very interesting. You do a very interesting job, and and I know what jobs are jobs, and it's a grind on the day to day. But you are doing the job that many young people dream about as well. So,
well,
I hope that brings you satisfaction.
It certainly does, and thank you so much for letting me waffle on, Gav, and chat.
Good waffle.
Thank
you, Tim.
Honestly, pleasure.
So I'm going to click the X there, and you can go and disappear now. Thank you so much.
Bye, Gav.
Oh, removing Tim there. Tim Howes, historical costumer. Genuinely, it was really nice. I've known Tim for a while now, and after a production, he has told me some of the things. He's very discreet, as you saw, about what he's working on. He's worked on some very interesting things, and some things to come. Now, I enjoyed that conversation. I always like to see the inroads to this incredible creative industry that we're all part of. Next week, Ramona Ali, journalist, writer. Fascinating person. Her articles about her, she writes a lot about herself. She writes a lot about fiction. A really, really good person. I've had the privilege of crossing paths with them a couple of times on a project that we both work on together. Look up their writing. If you're a Radio 2 person, you might have heard Ramona's thoughts for the day that she's done in the morning on radio shows there. I've listened to them back. So and one of the things I love about Ramona is her energy. She has got incredible positivity and an energy, and that's next week, and I'm just sorting out the ones afterwards. So thank you for your time. Thank you again, Timothy. Thank you again for asking questions and being here. And I'm interested in people, so you could tell me your story anytime. Not now. I'm a bit tired. I've got a lot of work to do. I need a little lie down. Another time. See you next week. Bye bye.